Put your phone down for a second. Or at least admit the thing you're holding is one of the bricks that was placed carefully to build a wall between you and the real world. You live in a city full of people. You have thousands of contacts. You can message anyone on the other side of the planet in less than a second, and yet you still feel hollow. You still feel alone. You still wake up with that quiet dread that life is happening somewhere else, without you. The painful truth is this: your loneliness isn't an accident, it's a design outcome, not of one app, not of one company, not of technology in some vague way. It's a strategy that works best when people lose their deep bonds with each other and start treating connection like a product they can purchase, consume, and optimize. Welcome to the Hidden Self, where we stop pretending and start telling the psychological truth that society refuses to say out loud. This video is a decoding. We're going to trace how modern life engineers isolation at the individual level, how that isolation becomes profit, how it turns into political polarization, and how it finally erodes empathy until people can walk past real suffering and still call themselves normal. And then we'll get practical in the only way that matters, not with another app, not with another hack, but with a way of living that reconnects you to other humans in the only language your nervous system understands: presence. You've probably heard that loneliness is just a personal issue, something you need to fix with mindset, something you need to fix with gratitude, something you need to fix by going out more or joining communities like it's a hobby choice. I'm not going to insult you with that, because if loneliness were just a personal failing, we wouldn't see rising despair in the most connected countries on Earth. We wouldn't see record rates of depression and self-destruction happening right alongside hyperconnectivity, right alongside social platforms, right alongside messaging that never stops. So ask yourself the uncomfortable question: what exactly are you connected to if you can't feel held by it? Let's start with the oldest mechanism: atomization. In every era, communities were protective. People didn't survive alone, they survived together. A tribe wasn't romantic, it was structural. It gave you safety, routines, roles, mutual obligations, shared meaning. It was how a human animal learned: you belong here, you are not helpless, and you're not invisible. Now look at how modern systems treat that need. Modern governance and financial capitalism did not need your loyalty in the way a tribe did. It needed your predictability. It needed you to be manageable. It needed you to be portable. A community-based person tends to say no. A lone worker tends to say yes because they're afraid. So over time, the social body was broken apart. Historically, this accelerated during industrialization. People were pulled out of villages and family structures and dropped into unfamiliar cities where survival depended on wage labor, not mutual support. Your ties didn't strengthen, they dissolved under pressure. You became someone with a schedule, not someone with belonging. Then came the next layer: urban planning that pretended it was about privacy while actually engineering separation. Think of the suburbs after major wars. The houses arranged like islands, fenced, set back, silent. People weren't encouraged to sit on the porch and chat with neighbors. They were encouraged to retreat into sealed spaces, close the blinds, and raise the volume of a personal screen. That is not modern lifestyle. That is loneliness being engineered like infrastructure. Here's the first brutal truth you may not want to face: systems need you alone because an alone person is easier to push. An alone person is more fearful, and a fearful person searches for relief. Relief becomes a market. If you don't have a network that catches you, you buy things to soothe yourself. You accumulate debt to buy comfort. You seek instruction from whoever promises certainty. You pay for answers because you can't find grounding through real relationships. In a healthy society, humans rely on three spaces: family, work, and a community space, a third place. A place where you meet people without buying something, without performing, without optimizing your image. A square, a tea shop, a community club, a sidewalk conversation that happens because life is shared, not curated. Now observe what's been replaced. Public parks shrink. Squares get branded. Community spaces get commercialized. The places where strangers would naturally interact become branded experiences designed to extract money. The only remaining meeting points are malls and chains. You go to a cafe and you sit among people, but you're not actually with them. You pay for a seat and you hide behind a screen. You buy a small temporary permission to be around others while staying emotionally alone. The commercialization of connection turns relationships into transactions, and when that continues long enough, people lose skills, not just social skills, emotional skills, the ability to read a face, the ability to tolerate silence, the ability to approach someone without rehearsing, the ability to handle awkwardness without panicking and escaping. You stop practicing real interactions because real interactions are inconvenient. They involve collision. They involve eye contact. They involve hearing a voice that doesn't match your algorithm's predictions, so you avoid them. And then the emptiness grows. At some point, the nervous system starts begging for something that feels like comfort, something fast, something predictable, something that doesn't require your courage. That's when the perfect alternative arrives, and it destroys you while it pretends to save you. The digital oasis. You've been sold the idea that social media brings the world closer. But in psychological reality, it doesn't create connection, it creates performance. When you interact online, you are rarely interacting with a full person. You are interacting with a filtered version, a curated slice, a highlight reel edited for reactions. You're not seeing someone's body language in real time. You're not hearing their imperfect tone. You're not smelling the room. You're not experiencing their presence. You're experiencing a representation. And representations create a specific mental poison, silent comparison. Every time you see someone traveling, succeeding, glowing, laughing with friends, living a life that looks effortless, your brain doesn't just feel admiration, it feels threat, it feels deficiency. It tells you, quietly, that you are behind. Then the response isn't support, it's withdrawal. Instead of reaching out for a real conversation, you retreat deeper into yourself and try to build a different image to compensate. You chase visibility, you chase validation, you try to become the version of yourself that will finally be enough. This is the trap. Loneliness pushes you toward the screen, and the screen trains your brain to convert loneliness into self-attack. And then the algorithms do what they were designed to do. They turn your emotional state into fuel. If you're lonely, you stay longer. If you're lonely, you scroll more. If you're lonely, your mind is more reactive to outrage, because outrage offers a quick sense of belonging to a side. If you're lonely, conspiracy stories start to feel comforting, because conspiracy promises membership in a group that sees through it. It's not just entertainment, it's identity glue. Meanwhile, the real connection pathway between humans is being replaced with binary reactions. Like or dislike, agree or deny, follow or unfollow. Your nervous system learns a new kind of intimacy, one that requires no vulnerability, one that costs no courage. But intimacy without vulnerability isn't intimacy, it's just synchronized attention. So you end up with something terrifying, hundreds or thousands of people you can reach, and nobody you can call at 2 in the morning when you're breaking apart. The system makes you believe you're surrounded, but you aren't held. That's why the loneliness feels so specific. It's not just I'm alone, it's I'm alone in a crowd. Now let's talk about money, because here's the part people refuse to understand. Loneliness is profitable. Follow the money, and you'll see why the system wants you isolated. An isolated person is a consumer machine. Research and economic patterns across multiple wealthy countries show that people experiencing loneliness tend to spend more on entertainment products, fast comfort food, and services that promise convenience. It's not because they're weak, it's because they're trying to regulate pain. If you don't have support from family or friends, you don't get meals from someone who cares. You don't get rides. You don't get, hey, I'm thinking of you. You buy substitutes. You hire solutions. You don't have anyone to argue with and reconcile with, so you might pay for therapy. You might buy apps claiming to heal you. You might pay for a package of comfort because you can't stand the discomfort of being uncontained. Loneliness becomes a market for everything designed to replace human warmth with services. You may have heard about the rise of paid companionship in various forms. In some places, people hire someone to attend events with them. In other places, pet industries explode, not necessarily because humans love animals more, but because pets are a safe substitute. A pet relationship doesn't demand the same complexity as human relationships. It doesn't create rejection, it doesn't question your identity, it just receives you. And business loves anything that reduces emotional volatility. Now look at work. An isolated worker is easier to exploit. If you have a community and family, you have anchors. You have reasons to stop working. You have places you must return to. You have obligations that protect your humanity. An isolated worker has fewer anchors. They're easier to relocate, easier to demand overtime from, easier to pull into a culture where work is the only source of meaning. And when work becomes the only identity, you can be driven to exhaustion while the company tells you, this is your path, this is your value. So the system turns inner emptiness into GDP. You get lonely, you consume. You consume, you need more money. You work more. You work more, You lose time to connect. You lose time to connect, you get lonelier. That loop doesn't just happen. It's maintained by incentives, infrastructure, and attention markets. And now, the system uses the loneliness for something even more powerful. It weaponizes your emotions into polarization. When people don't have real local bonds, they start seeking belonging in abstract identities, political tribes, religious tribes, ideological camps, online communities built on certainty and rage. Loneliness makes you hungry for a group, for a narrative that makes your pain feel meaningful, for a collective story that tells you why you suffer and who to blame. Now, the system doesn't need to control your mind directly. It just needs to maintain your isolation long enough for your brain to do the rest. When you feel threatened, your brain automatically hunts for an enemy. It needs an explanation. It needs someone to blame so you can feel less helpless. And then algorithms amplify it because outrage keeps people engaged. Division keeps people watching. Rich versus poor, left versus right, old versus young, men versus women. Every axis of conflict becomes fuel. The genius is that most people think they are choosing their stance freely. They believe they are expressing opinions, but in psychological reality, they are often reacting to an internal wound. Loneliness becomes a wound, and polarization becomes the dressing that stings and distracts at the same time. That's why you can see billions of people arguing fiercely online while simultaneously being disconnected from empathy and from real solidarity. It's noise without healing. It's shouting in a storm of manufactured connection. Now we need to go deeper, because the most brutal truth isn't just social, it's biological. Let's talk about addiction and why loneliness is at the root of it for many people. There's a famous experiment associated with psychologist Bruce Alexander, often discussed through the concept of rat park. In older traditional setups, a rat is placed in a solitary cage with two water options, one plain water, one laced with an addictive substance. The rat, in isolation, tends to choose the addictive water and keeps consuming it until it dies. So researchers concluded the drug caused the addiction. Bruce Alexander asked a different question. What if the cage caused the desperation? What if the addiction was a coping response to unbearable isolation? So he created Rat Park, not just a bigger cage, a whole environment designed for social life. There were toys, food, and importantly, other rats. Rats had companionship. They could play. They could choose connection. The result was startling. Rats in Rat Park barely touched the addictive substance. Even rats that had already been addicted in the traditional isolated setup, when placed into a social environment, stopped using the drug and reoriented towards social life. The point is not to reduce humans to lab animals. The point is to reveal a mechanism. Addiction is often not a chemical inevitability. It's a survival adaptation in a world that has removed meaningful connection. That applies to shopping, to pornography, to doom scrolling, to gambling, to debt-driven consumption, to endless social media use. The substance might differ, but the structure is similar. A lonely brain reaches for relief when there is no human support, so ask yourself what your escape habits really do. Do they numb you? Yes, but why do you need to numb? Because the loneliness is intolerable. Now connect this back to modern cities. Many Western urban environments function like solitary cages. You get isolated from real relationships. You're emotionally starved. You're pushed into meaningless work for survival. You're monitored by attention markets. And then, of course, you reach for digital or consumer morphine. The system doesn't cure loneliness. It sells expensive painkillers so you can tolerate the cage another day, and another day, and another day. Now we reach the deepest consequence. Not sadness, not emptiness. Empathy erosion. Empathy is not just an idea, it's a skill trained through physical presence. When you sit across from someone, your brain and nervous system have access to real signals. Their breathing changes, their voice cracks, tears form. You see micro expressions. You feel the rhythm of a shared moment. Mirror neurons and embodied perception systems do what they were built to do. They help you resonate with another person's emotional reality. But online communication strips that away. Text doesn't carry the warmth of breath. Images don't carry a tremor in someone's body. A screen turns people into objects, and when people become objects, cruelty becomes easier. That's why online platforms are full of the most vicious comments people would never dare to say to someone's face. Because the face-to-face nervous system connection is missing, dehumanization becomes a simple byproduct of distance. A society that loses empathy is disabled, emotionally. It becomes normal to film someone suffering instead of helping. It becomes acceptable to walk past pain as content, as entertainment, as clicks. And loneliness plays a role because lonely people are more self-focused. Their attention narrows. Their stress response spikes. They care more about safety and small advantage because they feel unprotected. So empathy dies quietly, not with a dramatic headline, but with a slow replacement of presence by performance. Now you might be thinking, okay, fine, that's dark. But what do I do? If you're waiting for a perfect solution from the outside, you're already trapped. The outside world can't rewire your nervous system in one download, but you can break the chain starting from inside your daily life. Here's the darkest, honest takeaway. You can't destroy the internet. You can't replan an entire city. You can't undo history.